joining us now is Oji with stories trending around the world. Hello, Oji.
Good morning, Dr. Abati. How are you?
Good morning. You can see I'm excited.
Yes, you're always excited, and I'm even more excited because you're wearing a grey suit.
Yeah.
How are you this morning?
I'm good. Thank you.
Good morning, Tundu.
Good morning,
you're looking like the lawyer that you are.
All right.
Yes. How are you this morning?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing good. Good morning, Rufai. How are you?
Very well, Audrey. How are you doing? You're looking great yourself.
Thank you. Well, good morning to you, viewers. We begin what's trending in Nigeria. The massacre of farmers in Borno State has caused a lot of apprehension in the nation. Many Nigerians have taken to social media to express their frustration over the killings while calling out the government for its inability to secure the country. Senior Special Assistant on Media and Publicity to the President, Garba Shehu, began trending after he blamed the death of the farmers on their failure to get military clearance in an interview he granted to the BBC. The media aide was quoted to have said that most of the land in Borno State were infested with mines and terrorists and needed to have been signed off by the military before the farmers were allowed to work on their farms. While users on Twitter have expressed outrage over his statements. Let's take some tweets. One user wrote, "We're burying our loved ones every day, but Garba Shehu is worried about whether or not the 43 slain farmers got military clearance before working on their farms, while our northern governors are worried about social media regulation. This really has to stop. Hashtag North must be safe." Well, another user wrote, Garba Shehu told the BBC that the federal government liberated the entire Borno state from Boko Haram, but those farmers should have obtained military clearance before resuming farming activities in the area. 110 people killed, and Garba Shehu is blaming them for their murder. Well, meanwhile, some residents of Zabarmari have claimed that the death of the farmers could have been prevented if the military had taken action after being informed of the impending attack. Well, according to reports, one resident by the name Abubakar Saliu said they foresaw danger after they allegedly arrested a member of the terrorist group and handed him to security operatives. He claimed they informed the military of a possible infiltration of their community by terrorist group, but nothing was done about it. Well, according to the coordinator of Defense Media Operations, John Eneche, he said information gathered showed that the insurgents were already cohabiting with the residents of Zabarmari, but also that contradicts what really happened if we take this resident's statement, which needs to be investigated. He said that they had handed one Boko Haram member who actually told them that there was some sort of infiltration, a large group of those terrorists in their community, and they had informed the military about that, and nothing had happened. When John Eneche was questioned in an interview yesterday, he said that, well, one of the reasons or one of the methods the military deploys is to get information from the residents. So I don't know who dropped the ball here. It's really a horrific situation at this point.
It really is. And no matter who dropped the ball somewhere along the chain of command, it is completely out of place, as we've said. I think this is the 4th time we're discussing this on the show today. Garba Shehu's statement is completely unacceptable because the buck stops with the government. Section 14, subsection 2B of our Constitution says so. It is the primary responsibility of the government to secure our lives and property. So that statement, the attempt to blame the victim, is just so shockingly lacking in any kind of empathy. Let us not forget that these men, 43 of them, because I'm not going to go with the 110 in the tweet that you read. The United Nations has come out with a statement that they did not properly source their casualty figures, which is irresponsible of the United Nations. Absolutely. In a country like this, in a climate like this, with so much distrust, there was already talk of, oh, once again, the government is lying to us. So while I appreciate that they have, eaten humble pie and come out to say that they did not properly source that figure, they should not have run with it in the first case. It's 43 people, and that is bad enough. There's no need to exaggerate the numbers or inflate them. These men were attacked in their place of work. They were bound. and their throats were slit. Now imagine what each of those men went through as he was being killed and watching other people be slaughtered. We don't hear enough empathy. I always say this. All we hear now is blame. It's so upsetting.
So that point you made about empathy, that's one of the reasons people were outraged. Even though he came out with a series of tweets and he was also on Newsnight yesterday, I think that his statements were just really not called for at this point. Like you said, I believe I heard you say, is he now the spokesperson for the military? What is it? What was he trying to explain?
No, he took his job. He took his job too far. I think he was trying to exonerate the government, but he really did go too far.
Well, as to the casualties figures, we probably will never know what the exact figures are, because in Nigeria here, you know, oftentimes when there is tragedy, people play games with figures. But in this particular case, you may say that we saw those bodies, and they counted those bodies. They saw 43. Callon, the resident rep of the United Nations, was so emphatic when he was quoting 110. And then there was also another report from Amnesty International. But you know, the United Nations also has to be diplomatic in making quick comments about a situation like this. And this may have been a case of Callon, the resident rep, you know, pulling back, just not to get involved in very difficult domestic affairs for Nigeria. But that's, by the way, General John Enenche, that you quoted, he has two things have been attributed to him. One, that the military will still carry out investigations. Two, that you know, most of these people, the people within the community, that they are informants to the Boko Haram.
Correct. Well,
that's one categorical report in the papers today. Now, why would people who are victims become informants to those who are oppressing them? I know there's something called the Stockholm syndrome, you know, and our last guest, Dr. Nwokolo, was making the point about how communities respond in the context of war or suppression or oppression. But one big takeaway here is that apparently, you know, people in communities in many parts of the country do not trust the authorities. They do not trust the Nigerian state. And the point that Dr. Nwokolo made, I think we can restate it, is that if the people do not trust the state and its agencies, then of course they would look in the direction that they think is in their best interest. Now, in this particular case in Zabarmari, the survivors report that, contrary to what Garuba Shehu has been saying, that they in fact alerted the military.
Yes.
There was a Boko Haram terrorist that came into a community and he came to look for food. So he entered a particular home and then he was terrorizing the family. He wanted to take away food to his colleagues. Now, we were told that he went into the restroom. When he went to the restroom, the people, you know, summoned courage and they seized his rifle and they also overpowered him and then eventually handed him over to security agents. Now, the aftermath of that was a reprisal attack, you know, when the farmers were attacked on the farm and they were slaughtered, they were beheaded, and we have this carnage, this massacre. I hope in this case nobody will tell us not to use the word massacre. Because if there's a word, because if there's a word that is stronger than massacre,
it is a massacre.
We will use that phrase.
Yeah.
Because this kind of horror is the kind of thing that gives you panic attacks at night and you won't be able to sleep. You know, so that is what transpired. And I think that in this particular case, the only good sign that I have seen so far is the president dispatching a delegation immediately to go there, and Governor Zulum also identifying with the people. And I guess that perhaps the federal government was responding to the scope of the outrage. You know, otherwise, ordinarily, it's only a press statement that we will have received. As for our brother and friend, Garuba Shehu, where he has tried to revise his statement, but I think, you know, no matter what he says, he lost it on this particular one. You know, because one, the question has been raised, he's not a spokesperson of the military. John Enenche, General, has been speaking. You should just have left that part of the assignment to the military to clean up their own mess.
I think that point that you raised is very valid. Really, they should have just left the military to clean up their mess, because at this point, it just makes the presidency look very weak, because that's not what we need at this point in our nation. We need empathy, we need apologies, we need all of that at this point in our, in our nation. I mean, we're just talking about NSAS and all of the alleged Lekki shootings that have been occurring lately. And I don't understand why empathy is not one part that the federal government is not embracing at this point. And it's really awful at this point. I guess
you have it or you
yes,
don't.
I know. Well, I think before I come to you, Rufai, we'll go on a really short break. And when we come back, we'll continue on the conversation. Please stay with us.
Welcome back to the morning show here on the Arise News channel. Okpe is still here with stories trending around the world. Hello, G. Back to you.
Thank you. Rufai, before we went on a break, I was going to ask you what your take was on these two stories.
Oji, I'm quite very sad this morning, and my commiserations with the family that lost people dear to them in that attack, very painful. But I want to go straight and do this real quickly. It is very sad that this has happened constantly. While this happened, I just remember the case of Alno. If you remember, people too were killed on the expressway, and it was the same pattern. Accusation of complicity, the military dropping the ball as regards that. Accusation of complicity too when Governor Zulum was almost killed, if not for the intervention of the police in that regard. And this is a recurring decimal, so it will continue to happen. People have made arguments about service chiefs and all of that. It will continue to happen until there is sincerity in the war. You see, we talk about Chad. Chad came here, or came to our borderline, fought away these same Boko Haram fighters, pushed them into the Nigerian territory with less armory like we have in this country. Way less armory. I mean, I made a comparative analysis of the armory of the Chadians and what we have in Nigeria. We have way more. That's not to say there are no calls for more armory to be purchased on Super Tucano and the likes and things like that. But to a large extent, you start to see this trademark of complicity, and it's like making the mistake of the single story, like Chimamanda would say. What's the single story? The military drops the ball, there were accusations and counter-accusation, and it goes on and we forget it. I don't want to be a prophet of doom. I want to ask, what story are we going to share? Who are we going to blame when the next one happens? Because here we've successfully been able to push the blame to the military, but the president said, oh, I've done everything possible for the military to go in there and attack this onslaught of Boko Haram. Guess what? We've also pushed blame on dead people. This is the only time I see that we blame dead people for not getting clearance. It's shocking. So I was saying this morning to somebody, I said, I want to leave my house. Should I get clearance before I leave the house? Because I don't even know what's going on now.
Correct.
People that their life was snuffed away in their prime, we blame them for being dead. So the next thing, who are we going to blame? We're going to blame the military. And when people like Major General Adeniyi comes out to say, oh, there's no armory. If you give us armory, we fight this war. You court-martial him, you demote him by 3 years after all the hard work he has done for the military. You say he has no right to say that. Please, let's remember that we don't want Nigeria to be Yugoslavia. We want to be able to hand over this country to our children yet unborn. And quickly, I want to ask, are we truly patriots? Do we love this country as much as we should love it? God bless Nigeria.
God bless Nigeria. Good point, Rufai. We'll take another story. Still on the recent terrorist attack in Borno State, the Minister of Information, Lai Mohammed, was also trending on social media yesterday for saying Nigerians will remain at the mercy of terrorists due to lack of ammunition. He made this statement in Makurdi, the Benue state capital. Lai Mohammed further noted that terrorism isn't a local issue, but rather a global case, and there is no part of the world that doesn't experience its own pocket of terrorism. In addition, he said the country needed more support from global partners, as well as acquiring adequate weapons to defeat them. While the comments have incited reactions, many say they contradict the government's stance that Boko Haram is technically defeated. Tundu, this is what I was saying about empathy. I mean, also with the comments, the rhetoric coming from the federal government with all of these things. Absolutely there is a global pandemic with terrorism, yes. But the fact that the president only yesterday, talked about the fact that he had given out all the necessary requirements for the military to, secure the country, just defeats everything Lai Mohammed has just said as well. And everyone is really upset. I'll take a Twitter reaction real quick from Daniel, who wrote, Mr. Lai admitting that Nigerians are at the mercy of Boko Haram, the same group he claimed were defeated by Buhari in the wake of the 2015 elections. Buhari said yesterday he had given all support necessary to the military. Are we really helpless as a nation or hopeless? Question.
This is the thing, you can't give what you don't have, as a general rule. And I think a lot of the government's officials and ministers and whatever are falling all over themselves to minimize the role of the government in this disaster. And like I said, the buck stops with the government. Is it you or I or you that is expected to fight Boko Haram? Come on now. And you cannot say that because we have this problem in Nigeria, oh, it's fine, other people have that problem too. I don't really understand that logic. We need to hear a concrete action plan. And more importantly, we need to see it unfold. This cannot continue.
Well, see, one of the lessons of being a spokesperson or being part of a communications team, public communications team in the presidency, is that there should be synergy. Everybody that works in government is more or less a spokesperson for government, depending on your portfolio. There are some people who exercise that core function. One of the things we have seen, which I think needs to be addressed beyond the details, is the need for the communications team working for President Buhari to synergize a little bit more, to be more strategic. Because we see many government officials talking at cross purposes. It's like when something happens, everybody is rushing to be the first to say something on it. And so A contradicts B. So that in itself is an indication of some kind of omission at the level of strategy. Now, Garuba Shehu comes forward to say everything that is needed has been provided by the president to allow the military secure Nigeria and checkmate the terrorists, right? Then the Minister of Information, within the same space of time, yes, comes forward and says the problem is we lack ammunition. Even if that is true, it contradicts what the other spokesperson had already said, because they're saying two different things. Yes. And that's how you'll find it across board within government. I mean, the Minister of Finance says we are considering reopening the border. The Minister of Agriculture, Mohammed Sabo Nanono, who once declared publicly with great confidence that there is no hunger in Nigeria, says no, we will close the border will remain closed. And you keep wondering, what kind of communication strategy do we have here? So I think that at that level, that needs to be addressed, because the only thing it will bring is just embarrassment. Now, the second point that needs to be made, yes, when the Minister of Information says terrorism is global, we all know that.
Yes.
That's why we have the Multinational Joint Task Force. That's why we talk about global solidarity in the war against terror. But I quoted the commander of the Special Operations, U.S. Special Operations, earlier on, when he said, yes, the U.S. is willing to cooperate with Nigeria, but Nigeria itself must show the leadership within the West African region. In other words, it's like saying, you yourself must show the will, you must show the commitment, you must show that you are serious about tackling this problem before we too can support you. Could that be that there is an omission also at that level? So these are additional questions that we need to raise, because this particular subject, we had discussed it twice earlier before you joined us.
Okay. Rufai, your quick take on this topic before we go on a short break.
And the sad reality, Dr. Albert, is that in the next 1 year, I pray we are not discussing this particular subject again.